focusing on language arts as well as literacy development, the role of parents, the role of communities, the role of government in developing literacy skills, especially in a dispensation where we do have many tribes, which means that we have many languages, and all must be respected and utilized, you know, not castigated and sort of put in a shelf. And later on it will come through, and I know so many people had that experience of you are in class and when you spoke a different language, you kind of got a beating, or you were told to go to the naughty corner simply because you spoke another language. It made it sound like it was a crime that your community and your parents taught you something that was wrong. Anyway, through the conversations and my guests, we hope to demystify some of the myths that are around this conversation. Otherwise, the concept of physical literacy is continuing to gain traction, especially internationally, but more so locally. When we look at our country, the increasing interest has also given rise to concerns. One of the use to the interpretation as well as the meaning of the term literacy within the context of multilingualism as a common practice for many. Now, Uganda will be joining the rest of the world to commemorate the International Literacy Day that was on the 8th of September, but here for us in Uganda, we have chosen a different day to celebrate as well as put more focus and emphasis on things that we desire be done in order to have a better population that is literate at the end of the day. Equally, this is a conversation that is quite timely because we're going into elections, and civic education is one of those things that are important for the electoral cycle to actually be very, very smooth. But what is being done by government to be able to consider all when it is dispensing its duties through the Electoral Commission to the masses, well, I believe we'll touch base on that. Anyway, I'm having this conversation with the Senior Projects Coordinator, UNESCO Project Office here in Kampala, Charles Draecabo, and then Hasfa Mago, who is the founder and literacy specialist with Book Drive. They're going to help us examine the critical literacy and intersections of oral and written and performative literature. And so that's the best line of it. I'm going to allow them their salutations and then we'll get into our discussions, starting with my immediate left.
Yes, thank you very much, Priscilla, and good morning, listener and the viewer. My name is Charles Draecabo. I'm the Senior National Projects Coordinator at UNESCO Project Office here in Uganda. And as UNESCO, we are very glad to invite you to be part of this celebration to mark the International Literacy Day. And as it was communicated, this is done every 8th September, but in Uganda we're celebrating Tituo Day on 12th of September 2024. So you're most welcome, and we'll be in a position to give you more details on how we're going to proceed with the events of the day. Thank you.
All right, Margo.
Good morning. Thank you, Priscilla. My name is Margo Hasfa, the literacy specialist under Book Drive, Read to Learn Foundation. And I'm very excited for the strides that Uganda is taking when it comes to promoting literacy and incorporating multilingual learning as well. So as we celebrate today and the rest of the year, encourage everyone to, in your homes, in your communities, wherever you are, to embrace a culture of reading and promoting literacy for the social development of our country.
All right, Mr. Draecabo, literacy is a word that people hear, not so often, but they hear about it. However, in the 21st century, I know that it has broadened to include other things, especially in regard of the fact that it is a human right.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Priscilla, and once again, viewer and the listener. Today, as we sit here joining the rest of the world to celebrate this International Literacy Day, I would like us to reflect on the fact that literacy is fundamentally defined as the ability for one to read and write, especially simple text. But over the years, as mentioned, this has transformed we're now in a new dispensation, we're in a new world with different form of literacy requirements, skills and knowledge that we need to transmit to our learners, especially the young ones. But that said, when we want to focus on this, we need to ask ourselves some questions. Why is it important for us to focus on this literacy? For example, why do we celebrate it even, and to begin with? There is evidence to show that children who read and write in their mother tongue, they learn better. Children learn to read and write better in their mother tongue. Yet, there is evidence, unfortunately, that 40% of these people lack access to education and in a language to speak. And the situation is even worse in Africa, where we have 8 in every 10 children who start school do so in a language different from their own. So that means 8 children out of every 10 children who start learning actually do so in a language that's not theirs. And this tends to disadvantage them in very many ways. And this is a barrier. It's a barrier to literacy, and we cannot accept this honestly. And we also know for every 3 out of 4 children, especially in developing countries, they cannot read or understand a basic text by the age of 10. And this is a situation that we will not like to see continue. And the statistics say over 754 million illiterate people are existing in the world. So as we join the world today, as a country, we are trying to reflect on this and say, how do we change the scenario? How do we move away from this to make sure that literacy is not only about reading and writing, but that literacy is a human right. A human right in the sense that it gives you the skills and the knowledge to be able to want to communicate. Because if you can communicate especially in more than one language, then that gives you an edge, that gives you an advantage, that makes you to be able to cross the borders. So secondly, in the new era, literacy is important because we are borderless, so to say. We move from one country, one society to another one. So we are positioning ourselves as a country that to prepare our children, to prepare all the citizens of the country to be able to fit in other cultural contexts, to be able to easily move from one country, from our country to another one. You can imagine a situation where if you are to move to another country and the only language that you can speak is only one language, and they don't have that. So assume you went to China.
You need a translator.
And you need a translator, and then you need the Google apps and so on.
And AI cannot consider all
Absolutely.
languages. Yeah.
So it's crucial, it's important, it's a human right, because once it's not enforced, we're disadvantaging a cross-section of the people.
Charles, you had this experience yourself through the education system. Talk to us about that.
Yes, absolutely. And you see, by the time we went to school, it was a given. And I don't know why that has changed now, that when you start to learn from primary 1 up to primary 3, you learn in your local language. And that's what we did. So as I speak now, I can very ably read and write in my local language. And when you reach primary 3, that's when they start introducing you to English, because they know the assessment at the primary living examination is going to be in English. But because of that advantage, I must say that a lot of children were able to move, to migrate easily. And they can therefore comfortably speak, in their own language. They can also speak comfortably in English. And we're even encouraging now to take another language, not only English. There's Kiswahili, you can take French, you can take German, so that this aligns with our theme that we are promoting this year, actually. The theme is promoting multilingual education, literacy for mutual understanding and peace, multilingual.
All right. Hasfa, what was your experience like through the education system, especially in your formative years? Were you punished for speaking your local language? And did you ever learn anything before you learned English?
No, actually, I remember You would even have to wear the signpost that says, you know, the one who has been speaking vernacular and things like that. Yeah. So I'm so excited to see that now you have kids learning in local languages. I think for me, it was more of a punishment than anything. And then at O level is when you had to pick a language to take. So then I tried out Luganda, but then I had no idea.
Interests were, and the stigma. Many of us didn't take that Luganda because of the stigma.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you were more important if you did French and Swahili than if you did Luganda. Okay. Yeah.
Colonialism within the education system. How many languages do you speak now?
Just English.
Just English.
And Luganda too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, all right. You do have the book drive and you are the founder. What problems did you realize that stirred you up to start this?
I think for me the key problems that we realized were the integration of community-led interventions, but then were also led by young people and at grassroots level. So it started at the peak of the lockdown for the schools, where then you had no activities happening in terms of academics in these communities. And also most of the kids didn't know how to read or anything like that. So we thought, okay, the young people are here, they are redundant, they have nothing to do, but then also the children have no ability to read. So that's when we started the Literacy Champions Fellowship, to empower young people between the age of 13 to 18 to be the champions in their communities. Why this was good? Because they understand the local language that is spoken within the community that they come from. So they're able to teach and integrate everything they've been given into a local perspective. So then they teach children in their maybe Ludama, Luchiga, Lusoga, Lunyankole, but the knowledge that is given to them as champion is from an oversight of teaching reading through play and opening a book club. How they teach it is according to their local perspective and language. Okay. So that has really been good. But also there was a challenge of the negligence of literacy. So most parents see more value in going to school than attending a book club, because there is no value in learning how to read if you're not learning mathematics. Yes.
But you can't do mathematics if you can't read and write.
No. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what has been the transformation you've seen, especially on the side of parents and the communities, and equally the children?
I'll give an example of one community in particular that we started with that is now 3 years in. When it started, it was only 5 kids that were attending the book clinics, the book club. And of course there was that, why are you going to the book club? You're wasting time. Children, we want our children to learn mathematics. But the 5 kids that started, when they went back to school, their performance greatly improved. So the next holiday, when it was time to open the book club, we had an increase from 5 kids to 285. Because now children could see that when their child learned how to read, they were performing better in school. But also when they would go back at home at the shops, in their parents' shops and helping out the parents, you would find them in the shop and you have a 7-year-old who is helping the parent interpret and understand different things. Not because of going to school as much as that is also important, but also because now they had the ability to read and comprehend different things. So they were able to understand. And I also think the biggest shift I've seen is the curiosity of parents, you know, coming to visit the book club, sitting down and being interested in sitting down and saying, you know, I want my child to read to me because I also want to understand what reading is like. And the joy of being able to read in their local language, I think that is really beautiful for the parents. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for creating that impact on a small scale. If only it can be picked up to make it a national scale. I know that the government, especially through the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, is continuously trying to evolve and have inclusion of multilingualism. Charles, multilingualism is very attractive in wording, but the realities on ground may quite be different, especially for us in Uganda. We have many languages. They're teaching us Swahili, French, German, which are reality. They are foreign languages because they are all languages of communities that are beyond the borders of our existence, and yet we want to push for this multilingual nature of education. You've had interactions with the government. You've been able to work with them here and there. What are the realities on ground for making it a reality?
Yeah, thank you very much once again. And before I respond to that, I just wanted to recall what Mago said about the importance of literacy and how significant it is. And also to assure the viewer and the listener that actually children love to read. That's given. You get a child who can be able to read, that will be the biggest pride. They want to love to read and write. And secondly, we have this scenario, and is a story just to illustrate how significant literacy is. That in those colonial days, one time there was a man who was disturbing his, he had gone to see his daughter, and he became a problem, and so they had to send him off, and the local leader had written a letter to him and said, please take this letter. When you reach your administrator, please hand over this letter to the administrator. And he did exactly that. And what was in the letter was that this man is a nuisance and do arrest him. So because he couldn't read the text, he actually handed himself in. You see, the power of reading, that's to emphasize that. But besides that, now coming to the point about multilingual, the need for us to have multiple lingual ability, you see in the country like Uganda, like you rightly said, we have numerous languages. Definitely we cannot claim that every Ugandan should learn all of those, but there are some basic languages that you need to have. For example, your mother tongue, the language that your mother speaks, so to say, and you are taught in that. That is not only for you to communicate, but it is a transforming values. In my own cultural setting, there are certain expressions that are only in my language. So you can't have it in English, you can't have it in another language. So that alone is basic. So it is an encouragement and is a commitment and is a policy issue that every child should be given an opportunity to learn his or her own mother tongue. That's one. Two, of course, now when you are in a school setting, you have to know how to write assessment. Assessment is in English, which is the official language. So that becomes the second language that you will have. Now, beyond that, you move from one city or you move to one district to another district. So in that cultural setting, in that environment, you also need to adapt yourselves. So that means the third language comes in. But because of absence of a standardized, local, acceptable official language, there's now a drive by the ministry to be able to introduce Kiswahili as an alternative to that. So probably then Kiswahili becomes your third language. You see now, because you have to go outside the country and you are going to maybe practice your skills in another country, probably you need another language that makes you now get the fourth language, maybe it's French or it's German. So that makes you multilingual. But on my experience with the government, there are attempts that the government has put in place to be able to try to ensure that we promote literacy, even for the adults. For example, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development has the program of functional adult literacy. This is focusing on people who fell through and they were not able to read and write at early ages. It's to give them opportunity even at advanced age so that they can go and learn. So they have evening classes, they have the women groups, they have the men's clubs, and so on and so on. By the way, prior to that, even this current arrangement, we used to have what we have, they used to call them the community centers. Those community centers, we had a platform for elderly people to go and learn how to read and write, and they worked very well. And so I'm happy that the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development is picking that up And so that is one area that I see they have made a commitment to do that. Of course, the second one is the introduction of the universal primary education. We know with the introduction of UPE, the enrollment has increased from 3.1 million from the time it was introduced to now 7.5 or thereabout children who enrolled. The fact that the children are in school is a testament that they are interested and they are willing. So what is now challenging is for us to ensure that the children who are in school are able to read and write. That's the challenge that we have to deal with, because they can be in school and they may fail to read and write, which is a very big issue. Another component which is not structured but which is working well is through the churches or the faith-based institutions. You find in most of these churches, you have to read the Bible or you have to read the Quran, and that means that you have to be literate at some level. So those kind of innovations are attempts that I think the government can build on, they can strengthen together with the development partners to ensure that we increase the level of literacy, especially multilingual literacy in our community.
That's good. Now, multilingual usually comes down to culture, and there's a C in UNESCO which stands for culture.
Absolutely.
Have you had any engagements with our cultural leaders, and what has been their response in making sure that they also focus on literacy for their communities and their people? Because I see them pushing a lot for health-related issues, HIV/AIDS. You see them pushing a lot for developmental issues, you know, around adding some more money to the pockets of their people. But never have I really had many of them, you know, addressing the literacy issue in society.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yes, UNESCO promotes culture as a way of also human rights, but also a way of coexistence of people, because their appreciation is that if I'm able to relate with you well in a different culture, then I'm able to create peace. We can live in peace. So with that background, we strengthen cultural institutions as one of the ways and structures through which we promote those aspects of peace. And in doing so, we've been engaging with the different cultural institutions in the country and also in other parts of the world. And one of the fundamental things you will realize, especially in Ugandan context, is that the cultural leaders actually are the first promoters of the indigenous language, the mother tongue. You will rarely find a cultural leader speaking in a language other than that. That's the way of trying to encourage and motivate and make people appreciate the local language. That's one. And two, the component of education is actually key, one of the key pillars that they try to promote. And there are a lot of drives to ensure that the parents take the children back to school and they promote literacy by thereof when they go to school. So that way we see a lot of things that they are doing. And the third aspect is in many of the cultural institutions, there is the transition of value through taboos, through poems. There is the fireplace, storytelling, you know, that is unequated. You cannot equate that to anything else, because people at the fireplace, they will sit, they will tell stories to the children. That's communicating to them in that language that they can understand. So there are a lot of efforts like that. There are many aspects that can be improved, but I can say that the cultural institutions are a very strong anchor on which the aspect of multilingual linguistics can be promoted.
All right, Mago, you're one who's been able to engage with communities, but also parents, to encourage them to have their children come to the book drives, but also to permit them do so, you know, joyfully without making it look like a stigma. And so I know that parents do hold a very serious responsibility in creating the environment at home that does foster the literacy development in our children that we desire to see. How involved is this cluster of people in, you know, bringing us into the space where literacy development skills are improved among the young people?
So before I even actually respond to that, I'll just compliment on the initiatives that are being done as well. If you see now, right, primary level, they have a designated literacy hour, which was never there before. In this literacy hour, it's expected that all teachers and students come together just to focus on reading. So in any capacity, but as long as it's focused on reading. And also there is more integration of Braille and sign language, which I think is going to help and push the narrative of that as well in terms of reading. And then when it comes to how important are the parents, let me tell you something, that if at a home basis there is no literacy interventions and you send the child to school, the gap to cover up is going to take longer by the teachers. Whether you send them in a school that has a good student-teacher ratio or it's overly populated, it doesn't matter. But the intervention should also be based on a community and family level. So if the children are involved in exposure to literacy by the age of 5, as you've seen, this is when the early stages of forming the brain and everything. So if by age 5 they're already interacting with books through the parents, the guardians, the grandparents, you have a better effect and transformative effect when it comes to that, as opposed to them only coming across books once they reach school. So for me, when it comes to parents, grandparents, and caregivers, they're very crucial in helping us promote literacy, and mostly multilingual literacy. So if they engage with the children from the early years, so that by the time the child reaches school, the school level, and they're enrolled in school, they've been able to develop a culture of reading, and it's been part of their foundational years of development. There, the role that the teacher is playing is just adding on to what has already built, rather than starting from ground zero. Yes.
Okay. All right. Charles,
Yeah.
the literacy element was adopted in 2015.
Yeah.
And so it begs the question, 9 years down the road, what are some of the achievements that have been, realized globally but also locally?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Globally, since the literacy drive was launched, there are a lot of things that have been put in place. One of them is for the member states to recognize literacy as a human right. And by signing the convention and celebrating the International Literacy Day, they actually agree as a member state to drive the aspect of literacy. That's very strong, because then Uganda, for instance, having signed that commitment, is obliged to ensure that the aspects of literacy are taken in place. That's one key area. And the second area has been areas of curriculum reform across the continent and also within the specific countries. The curriculum reform takes various forms. In Uganda, for example, we now speak about the thematic curriculum. For instance, the thematic curriculum is one of the examples that we can quote and say it's a result of that commitment of the drive of the literacy. The thematic curriculum, for people who are hearing for the first time, is basically to mean that to promote learning and reading in a local language at the lower level. And that has been there, so that there's an effort and an attempt to make sure that we reintroduce what was there before, as I had spoken of. So that curriculum reform is one of the key areas. And of course, the third area is to celebrate success in literacy in various ways. Sometimes we are overwhelmed with the problems and the challenges, and we fail to celebrate. You see,
speaking of celebrations, how is Uganda celebrating today? We're having the celebrations. Tell us more about that and the theme and how we're going to be building towards it in the next 365 days.
Yes, the celebration today is actually at the last end of it, or it is the climax of events. Normally when we're organizing this, there is events that take place before, there's an event that is today, and there's a day event that will happen after. Okay. So previously there had been a range of activities. One of them was what we call the symposium or the boot camp, where children, especially children, were brought together. Literacy champions were brought together to be able to demonstrate what they are doing. We had a camp where children expressed themselves in writing and in reading, in doing literacy competitions. It was both virtual and physical, to allow to demonstrate to people how the practices they are doing takes place. So today is going to be the national celebration, which will be at the President's auditorium. and is about to start, and there are going to be people moving around, marching from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, with the banners, with the band, and this is just to drive the agenda to the community that such a thing is happening. And then we'll have a number of speeches to highlight the significance of this Literacy Day. But then after that, there are also going to be a symposium in Makerere. For example, is it around 26th of September, they're going to be bringing the academia together to be able to dispense and talk about this. There are book drives. People are going to be, literacy libraries drive is going to be undertaken. So after this event of today, the celebration today, there are also going to be other, other events that will come on to be able to put. But the point I was highlighting is the need for us to celebrate the benefits of literacy and also the success thereof in literacy.
Okay. Mago, your call to action from government right down to the grassroots.
Starting with government, for me, the call to action is to keep such momentum up, because as you can see right now, the government is working together with civil societies, communities, all of us coming together to, discuss policies, discuss budgets, but also highlight the importance of literacy at large. Then when it comes to the educators, is to integrate and appreciate the use of the literacy hour, and also look at local initiatives that can be done in the terms of local languages in integrating literacy. And then also we have the aspect of publishers and creative writers. How can we create more materials that is diverse in terms of language and promotes multilingual learning? And then when it comes to every Ugandan and parents out there, is to integrate reading and appreciate the value of literacy from the foundational years all the way to the later years in life. And how can we come together to do, as Charles mentioned, book drives, engaging in community libraries. I'll mention something that most Ugandans actually are always shocked by. We have over 192 existing community libraries across the country. Are we appreciating these? Are we putting them to use? Do you take your children to visit these libraries? Are you volunteering to do activities at these libraries? And what else can we do to come together as a nation to appreciate and promote multilingual learning and literacy as a full aspect for growth and socio-economic empowerment? All
right, we're going to be taking a short breather. We'll return with this conversation. One of the words that are in the theme for this year's celebrations around multilingual education is cohesion. And Margot here alluded to us that there's 192 libraries across this country. I think for us in Kampala, we're able to interact with the National Library here at Uganda Road, but to know that there's many of them, and she has traversed some of them, and the doors are open to those facilities. And more so, you have talked about how they're well-staffed and well-equipped. Tell us about that and what you have seen as the transformational impact of children engaging with those libraries.
I'll give two examples. One is the Rukoya Library just here in Mukono that integrates with the Salama School for the Blind. So they operate both on a community level and with the school. They operate the Braille book clubs. And then you have children who are also not blind attending the same book clubs but also learning Braille. So the impact of this, but the children who come to these community libraries, as much as they come to read and learn, they also do the Braille, and then they also do the musical side. So for them, a library has become a safe space, a space where they have a room to be creative, where they acquire skills and knowledge, and also they're able to do some computer skilling and activities like that. Then they also have the books on bikes, where you have from the library, they have the bicycles and they drive deep into the villages with the books and sit down and read with children. So for me, that has been really impactful to witness that you can travel across the country as deep as Bukedia and you find a community library somewhere deep in the village, and you find kids in the holidays, running and walking just to go to this safe space to read. But I think the key initiative that the libraries have done so well is the creating a safe space, first of all, and then integrating the aspect of the local language. So the deeper you go, the more you see that the language that is being used in these community libraries is the key language in that community setting.
Okay. All right, so when you hear the word languages, you're really thinking something that, you know, goes with your tongue. But from this conversation, I'm realizing that when you speak about sign language, that's a form of language. When you talk about Braille, that's a form of language. You have talked about MDD, that's a form of language. And so all this being adopted into the system, and earlier education system had them. They've just really been eliminated by proprietors being hungry for money. And so I hope that as they're hearing this conversation, they get to understand as to why the MDDs and the other forms of language were integrated into the education system so that they can be able to produce holistic, literate population for the future. Now, the international theme is around promoting in multilingual education, literacy for mutual understanding and peace. For us here in Uganda, Charles, we're looking at promoting multilingual education and literacy for cohesion, as well as socio-economic transformation. Could you talk to us about how cohesion and socio-economic transformation can actually be improved when it comes to multilingual education?
Yeah, thank you very much, Priscilla. And on the aspect of the theme, especially the multilingual transformation and how this can lead to socio-economic cohesion. First of all, we need to understand where we are, especially in the country in terms of doing that. There are all efforts, very good ones by the government of Uganda to, for example, introduce Kiswahili as an official indigenous language that should be adopted across and taught in schools, and the children should be able to learn that. That, on one hand, is going to add an addition to the language that children, our children know. And when that happens, you can know that it opens opportunity for our children to move freely and communicate freely within the East African region. So that way they can be able to coexist, they can be able to do, we can be able to do business, we can be able to promote peaceful coexistence. So movement will not be a problem if within the East African language we are able to express ourselves in Kiswahili. So that's one area where I think the government is coming up very strongly. And the second thing that I think we need to highlight, and which is very important, is the aspect of the thematic curriculum that I mentioned earlier on, that the government is making an effort to ensure that learning takes place initially in the local language, the mother tongue first, before you transmit into that. So when that happens, that gives an opportunity for building identity of the children, the impact values in your community. But at the same time, as you grow, you should be able to cut across and move to other areas. And those practices that were there, which were working, I think we don't need to discard them. And you know, some people will talk fondly of the experience in those days where education movement was so easy. You know, you can finish, for example, your secondary school or primary school in Gulu, for instance, and then you apply to go and join Budo, and officially you migrate. And then somebody from Kabale will want to go and study in Moroto, for instance. So by that, people were moving, and it was promoting kind of intercultural, intertribal linkages. You will have friends and colleagues across the country. So it's not only that you are doing in the US. So I think such efforts and many more are attempts that the government is going to do. Of course, there's still much work to be done to be able to make sure that even at a lower level, people have the right skills to be able to teach those basic literacy.
Thank you so much, Charles. We are definitely grateful for your endeavors under UNESCO to be able to work with government to ensure that there is cohesion as well as socio-economic development in consideration of literacy. Mago Hasfa, also a literacy specialist, thank you so much for the work that you are doing on ground to make sure that right from the grassroots this is dealt with. We do have Steve